Like we're ready. Oh, are we live? Oh, we are live at the final day of MegaCon 2023. Who has been here all 4 days? Anyone been here all 4 days? Who's here for your first day? Who's here for your third day? Second day, people? All righty, very cool. I am super excited for this panel because one of the questions I get asked the absolute most is, how can I do what you do? Every single 16-year-old on the planet wants to be some sort of YouTuber. They want to talk about movies. They want to know how we get to do what we do. And one of the extra exciting things about this one is on this panel, we have two very different paths that have led us to this con. And so what we're looking to do is kind of share our stories and what we did and learned along the way to be able to talk movies for a living. That's cool. That is a cool way to live your life. So with all of that said, if you could introduce yourself in just a couple sentences.
Sure. I'm Perri Nemiroff. I work for Collider doing an interview series called Collider Ladies Night. I do a show called For Your Consideration, where me and two close friends, we try to predict who's going to win the Oscars. I do. Oh my God, there's so many. It just grows and grows over the years. If you show up to the movies early, you could see a segment I do called Perri's Picks, where this company called Nuvi lets me pick some of my most anticipated films for the next couple of months. So there's that too.
Whenever I go to the movies, that pops up and I start screaming at the theater. And I'm excited now. If I start screaming at you, you'll look at me like I'm crazy rather than the people around me.
Which is better.
I have no idea. It could get interesting up here, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited to have you here because I was watching Collider Movie Talk back 10 years ago.
I'm Cody Leach, just a lifelong movie fan, and very similar to Sean. Just once we got into the part where YouTube started to have all these people talking movies, I was like, man, I want to do that. And started to slowly do it while I was working full-time, raising kids, everything like that, and eventually built up enough to be able to go full-time about a year and a half ago.
And my name is Sean Chandler. My YouTube channel is Sean Chandler Talks About. My story is so similar to his. We literally started our channels 6 weeks apart. And so just started talking movies on the internet because that's what I do in real life. I thought, hey, I'll find other nerds on the internet, start talking about it. And I was lucky enough to turn my nerdy hobby into a full-time career talking movies on the internet. So that's the big, broad picture of what we do. We kind of want to dive into each of our journeys to kind of get to this stage because our paths are pretty different. So with that, let's start kind of with you. How do we go from, I assume, growing up loving movies to later today, you're sitting down with the Screamcast. Let's walk down that path right there. How do we get from 1996 loving movies to here talking with the cast?
Back a little further, 1993, because it was two movies that put me on this path. It was Scream and it was Jurassic Park. Those are the first two movies where I didn't just get lost in the world that the filmmakers were trying to create, but I gained a greater appreciation for what it takes to actually transport a viewer and make them believe that that stuff is really happening. Fast forward to when I went to school, I always knew I wanted to get into journalism, so I got my degree there. And as soon as I graduated, I basically just cold reached out to every single website that I read, which happened to have included Collider, /Film, Screen Rant, Coming Soon, a whole bunch of companies that still exist and thrive today. And a few of them got back to me and they gave me freelance writing positions. And it wasn't what I dreamed it was going to be right out the gate, but I was writing these stories that let me hone my skills. And then I wound up growing to the point where I could critique movies on my own.
I can pause you right there.
Let's hear it.
You're writing for Collider about 10 years ago.
My very first article on Collider went up in April of 2012, and it was an article about someone who made movie dioramas out of Peeps. It still exists. You could read it if you'd like.
That is such an amazing starting point. Like, what's the thing that's that first one? It's always fascinating. He has the first movie that he reviewed. Also, like, really, that's the thing that changed your life. But a couple of years after that, you did an article recommending some movie called The Conjuring that a not so young person named Sean Chandler read, and you recommended. I left some comment like, "Hey, cool, dude. I need to check out that movie, man." And you responded back, and you went, "Thanks, but I'm not a man." That was literally a real interaction. That was my first memory of your existence, of me being like, "Oh wow, I'm an idiot."
That's not where I thought that was going to go. To make you feel better, I'm not going to name drop who, but I had one particular employer who I worked for about 3 years until we finally met in person. He was like, oh.
I'm glad I'm not alone. It's the fact that, like, I literally remember the first thing that I read from you because it was such a ridiculous story for me. Sorry, that's making this about me. This is your time.
That was a good one, too. I don't just think The Conjuring is one of the best horror movies ever made. I think it's one of the best movies of all time. I've seen that too much.
And I'd never seen it, so I can also thank you for introducing me to a fantastic horror film.
Fantastic franchise now. So I started writing for a whole bunch of different outlets, and then this isn't necessarily the right path for everybody, but it was something that felt right to me. It started to feel funny about critiquing other people's work without ever having experience of trying to make one of those things myself. So I decided to go to grad school, and I got a degree in producing, and I went through that program doing my assignments and making short films. And then when I graduated, I made a feature film, and they were all wonderful experiences that I'm very, very proud of. But one of the big takeaways from that experience for me was I found the right side of this business for me. And I stayed there, and I stayed there with more confidence than I had before.
And you said you went to Columbia, right?
I did. I went to Columbia's MFA program.
And this is the prestigious one.
It was a very cool program. I'll tell you why I picked it too. So one of the cool things about that program is you could pick between 3 tracks to specialize in. You could do directing, producing, or writing. I knew I wanted to produce. The reason why I chose that program, though, is because for the first year, they make all the students take all the same classes. So you learn a little bit about every single job on a set before you focus on your particular path.
Very cool. And I'll probably ask you a lot more questions about that when we kind of get into the specifics in a little bit. I also went to Columbia, but in South Carolina. So all these people are like, "Oh, you went to Columbia. That's really prestigious." Not the one I went to. That's what you went to. All right. Thank you so much. I'll have some questions just a second, diving into some specifics. What's your journey from loving movies growing up to doing it full time?
Yeah, so I've always loved movies ever since I was a young kid. That was kind of my escape a lot of times in my younger years. And anybody that grew up with me, seeing that this is where my life and career path went, should have been no surprise. I was the kid in elementary school that the teacher would yell at me and be like, "Stop comparing things to movies. Think a little deeper." And then sometime around 2009, I had dropped out of college after a year, was going for civil engineering, didn't work out. And I think it was Jeremy Johns or Stuckman. It was one of them. And I was like, wow, people are talking about movies on YouTube. That's awesome. And so I had my one false start in 2009 during the summer. I was talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And it was the worst content ever. It was just a generic laptop using the little tiny built-in webcam on my lap, lounged on the couch. Like, you know when you accidentally turn on the selfie mode on your phone and you don't realize it and you get that horrible double chin angle and you're like, ugh! That was like 7 of my videos. So false stop. And then you fast forward to summer 2016. I'm working for a construction company to where every day I'm driving 5-6 hours out into the middle of the swamps and the woods and doing dirt testing, soil testing, groundwater testing. And I'm listening to podcasts, Collider, things like that, all the way the drive there, all the way the drive home. And I found after a couple of days, I'm yelling at my radio because I want to join the conversation somehow. And so I bought a little $20 microphone, huddled in the corner of my little walk-in closet in my apartment and did a podcast for a couple of months. Grew out of that very quickly, locked myself in a bedroom on a Saturday and figured out how to use Premiere Pro, how to use Photoshop. Did my first YouTube video reviewing Sausage Party of all movies. So I'm the only guy on planet Earth, I think, where Sausage Party changed my life.
Sausage Party for you. And what was this first article for Claudia? You said
It was an article that had images of movie dioramas made out of peeps.
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 You never know which thing is going to change the trajectory of your life. Sorry about that. Continue.
No, you're good. So yeah, I just started basically making content that I wanted to watch, trying to somewhat mimic some of the things that I've seen, say the things that it felt like I was supposed to say. Quickly grew out of that. I got one comment that called me a Jeremy Johns ripoff, and I immediately changed everything on my channel. I don't even think it was 5 months in, and I do a review on this little known movie called Bloodfather starring Mel Gibson. Some weird guy named Sean Chandler comments and says, "Hey, I'm the only other guy on YouTube that reviewed this. Let's be friends."
The comment's still out there. That's great. Like literally, made a comment on this guy's video. Almost 7 years later now, we're on a panel talking about stuff. You never know which comment is going to change the trajectory of your life and make great friends.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that was pretty much history right there. And then just at some point, I decided to start talking about horror. I don't know why. I just randomly wanted to decide to talk about Freddy one day. And I always felt like I couldn't talk about horror. I was like the weird kid that only watched the movies that nobody else wanted to watch. And then suddenly I found all these people that were the same as me. They were like, "Oh, I love that. I love this series. What do you think about this?" And so my channel from then on kind of got much more of a horror focus. And then about a year and a half ago, luckily around the time that I could not stomach another week of the job that I was doing, building jet planes, decided to throw caution to the wind, go full time. And a year and a half later, I could not have made a better decision.
Very cool. My story is pretty similar to his. And was it your master's in film? So journalism?
Journalism undergrad, grad was film.
And so that's kind of what's fascinating about this panel. We're two hobbyists that just obsessed, went to the internet to just learn a bunch of stuff. And then there's the path of like,
I'm the one who paid an insane amount of money to get 2 degrees that I'm so thankful I actually use now.
But so my journey is very similar to his. I just grew up loving movies. Every Saturday, riding my bike with my sister to the comic book shop. And I've just always been someone that likes to have something created by the end of the day. So in 1998, I put up my first movie webpage. It was a Jackie Chan fan webpage. There's a picture of his body. You could click on the different body parts to figure out in which movie he injured himself. Ran it for about a year. After a year, the counter got up to about 999 clicks. That was 990 were me, and then the other 9 were my mother checking in to make sure I wasn't too weird on the internet, but I didn't stick with it. And then throughout the zeros, I had blogs, didn't stick with it. And then I did all of them, Zanga, WordPress, Live Journal. I did the whole thing, never stuck with it. And then starting a little over 10 years ago, started like him to discover those channels that were talking movies on the internet. And I went, I could do that. It's actually not nearly as easy as you think. You can do it. You just can't do it very well when you start. So I had 4 years of kind of false starts of posting a couple videos, stopping, posting a few videos, stopping for 6 months. And then in summer of 2016, I found myself unemployed and in rehab and went on a date night to try and rebuild some rapport with my wife. And we went to go see Lady Ghostbusters. And the internet does what the internet does. And if you don't like this movie, it's because you're a sexist and a terrible person. The other half of the internet, if you don't like it, or if you do like it, it's because you're a moron. It's like, come on now. Like, okay, it doesn't live up to the original, but come on now. So I just had is my phone talking to me? Yeah. I hit play, and so this panel started playing on my phone while I was doing this panel. Heard myself talking.
Panelception.
That was very Inception. Yeah, right there in the middle of this panel. But so I just want to do like a normal middle of the road review, and it actually clicked. And I posted a few more, and I got traction after years of writing things that no one ever clicked on. Posted some YouTube videos, and people actually watched them. And I went, "Hey, I think this is better." And my wife trusted me enough to like put some time into it. And 2.5 years later, I was able to go full time with my nerdy hobby of talking movies way too much. Like literally I had some interns in 2011 and I sat them down to lecture them about John Williams scores. That's when it clicked in my mind. hey man, you got a problem. You talk movies too much. And now I get paid to talk movies way too much. So all that said, that's our journeys of the paths you can take. And like, I constantly think, is there a way that I could start going to community college to get a journalism or film degree to just grow my knowledge? Some of you are young enough that you can be thinking that right out of high school. That's a path you might go down. And no matter what you might want to do, you can learn from our stories of just kind of that ground level of just learn and do stuff and create stuff. But with all that said, let's kind of pass it over to the tips section, advice section. If someone wants to follow down your path, what's the advice that you would kind of give them?
Just do it. Don't let anybody stop you. Don't think you need to get hired by a very popular outlet. You can literally do anything you want, like, especially nowadays compared to when I first started. Like, we could build websites and stuff, but I don't think it was as easy or viewed to be as easy back then to start using Premiere and buying cameras and all that stuff. Now you can literally do whatever you want. You can make your own webpage and write. You can make a YouTube channel, you name it.
It's a 4K camera in everyone's pocket.
So I was originally recording my YouTube videos on a proper DSLR camera that, it was expensive. I paid a lot of money for that. It recently passed and could not be fixed. It needed to be moved to the trash. And then I went to go buy another one, and I'm looking at that. It's a 4K camera that shoots beautiful footage, and it's really all you need to get started. So my biggest thing is just do it and don't let anyone stop you. And I'll add to that. So I'm lucky to have a home in Collider. I've been working there full time for, my God, like, I think it's over 10 years now. That's crazy to say. But even sometimes at Collider, when I'm not assigned to cover a specific movie or topic that I want, but I still want to talk about it, that is why I started my own personal YouTube channel that now has like a nice little community over there. It's because I can do whatever I want on the side. So my rule has been just do it, and also make sure all the content you make is true to you and what you want it to be, because otherwise it's not fun anymore.
I want to go back to something you mentioned during your story of you graduate and you emailed every webpage you read, doing the hustle. You can elaborate on that little because I think that's a key piece that people don't think about of like the hustle side.
Yeah. So the emailing thing it's a scary thing to do, and it's tough wording it right, and you're pretty much just sitting there keeping your fingers crossed someone's going to write you back. And there's never a guarantee that someone's going to write you back. But I mean, if you don't try, you're definitely not going to get anything. But I will say that 2 people that wrote me back, I still know well to this day. And I'll name drop one. I'll never forget this. Eric Davis, who now works at Fandango. He was he was running Cinematical. It was it was like basically before movies.com was Cinematical. He was one of the first people to write me back, one of the first people out there to give me a shot. And still to this day, I get to work with him on stuff. So kind of speaks to what you were saying before. You just, like, you never know what an email will lead to, what a comment will lead to. One of my best friends in the world in this industry that I do Merry Hour with every Friday on my YouTube channel, we met because one of the short films that I made in grad school played at a New York City horror film festival. He reviewed it, and I DM'd him to thank him for the review. And now, we're still the closest friends today.
And I love that because it starts as something totally natural, organic of just, hey, thanks for that. And a friendship is born.
It all comes down to, we don't obviously have to love all of the same things, but I think there's a shared reason that every single one of us are in this building today. It's because we are all enthusiastic about something represented here. But then on top of that, we all deeply respect and want to celebrate the thing that, someone else is into that you might not be into. So any opportunity you get to find that kind of community, reach out, talk to people, because you never know who's going to come back around.
Even kind of lingering on that point for just a second, all throughout this weekend, I met you for the first time a couple of days ago, and it was very easy to have a conversation with a stranger, even though I'm actually incredibly shy and introverted, because we have a shared common interest. And like the way that you are on camera is the way that you are back in the green room, or whatever you want to call it. And that's all weekend. People have been telling us the same things of they walk up to us at the meet and greet, they start talking to us. Oh, I feel like I already know you. That's because we're not putting on a show. We're not pretending to love movies. this is who we are. This is what we're passionate about. And so if someone shows up to talk with us, meet you for the first time, that shared common interest, it's still there. And if you want to get like transitioning back to kind of advice to everyone, if you want to get started doing this, let that passion shine through. So many people, when they get started, they want to chase what other people are get to being successful at. Everyone knows when you do that. Like whatever you're passionate about, I would say just start. It took me 20 years to turn my nerdy hobby of talking movies on the internet into my full-time job. There's a version of that where you hear it and you go, that's really discouraging. That's a long time. And there's a version of that where you hear it and you go, you just got to keep trying. I failed for 20 years. And now it's like my dream has come true. But it all started with just starting. It's never been easier to put content in the world, and it's never been easier for people to find it. There's a lot of competition, but you can get it out there. So just start.
My big one is just to start doing it because you enjoy it and do it as a hobby at first. Like you can have the drive to eventually want to get to a full-time career or to get to, you know, a massive following or whatever your end goals are, but don't start with that being the only thing that you're focused on. I get a lot of comments are like, how do I go viral? How do I get 1 million subscribers? How do I become famous? And it's like, that just happens because you're that talented or you're that lucky or the right circumstances. Nobody just starts and gets it, or at least not many people. So when you start it, do it because you enjoy it. Try to find ways to get better, take criticism, look at your own stuff with your own criticism, and eventually you'll build there if you have the drive, if you have the talent, if you learn the right lessons. But starting right out of the gate, looking only at the end goal, to me is the worst way to go about it.
So I want to go back to the idea, if you want to be an online critic, that if you want people to actually listen to you, read what you're doing, you have to actually have something to say. And you have to have a personality. Mm. And at the core of that is having a deep knowledge base to pull from, to offer something useful. So I'm going to send that over to you, kind of advice on how do you gain knowledge of films, gain a language to discuss films. I know, like, I think the biggest compliment I can ever get is, wow, you said what I was feeling. You put my emotions into words. What's your advice for someone on how to kind of gain that knowledge, that language, and even kind of, especially kind of pulling on your formal education? In that regard?
So the education definitely made a big difference for me. I feel like, you know, when I was starting out, I had very surface level language to express how I feel. And even just in terms of being able to analyze content and really understand the subtext of a story. At first, I was kind of just, you know, I was watching a lot of things because I enjoyed it. And even when I was curious about the behind the scenes of it, I didn't know the terminology to explain what was appealing to me. And you don't need to go to like a prestigious university. There are so many, whether it's YouTube resources now, online courses you can take, just something to get either hands-on experience or even just like the basic positions on a film set. I never would have learned a lot of that as early as I did, at least, had it not been for the school that I went to. And then ultimately, like even when you do go to school, it's one thing when you sit there and like, you know, you study a vocab list and you make sure you know the difference between a sound editor and a sound mixer. It's different when you're actually physically there talking to creators in those particular fields, if not getting hands-on experience yourself, like touching different pieces of equipment. That completely changed my vocabulary and understanding of this industry. And then it goes back to what we were saying before in terms of just jumping in and doing it. That's something that builds up, and it builds up in a way that's more true to you over time. You start to identify the things that you're drawn to, and you learn how to analyze and compare them. So it keeps going back to get as many resources out there as you possibly can and do it as much as you possibly can. Because if it's frustrating that you can't find the words at the beginning, the only way to get over that is to keep doing it and to find what you're drawn to and what your voice is.
So I'll kind of piggyback on what you said, talking about resources. Like for me, back in the day, before I started my YouTube channel, I read a couple books by this guy named Sid Fields. That's like one of the famous screenwriting gurus. And so he teaches you the template of how to write a hit movie. And then there's a book called Save the Cat that teaches this template of how to make a movie. And there's 1,000 reasons you can critique that, what he did with it, but it teaches you the language. It gives you a format as you're watching a movie to understand when things are happening and why they're happening and why they move you the way that they do. But it just gives you a language to discuss what you're seeing. When I started getting traction on YouTube, I was like, I need to be smarter in what I'm saying. I signed up for masterclass.com. They've got 10, 20 actors on there. They've got James Cameron, I believe Martin Scorsese, and the screenwriters. And so I just signed up for it and spent hours and hours and hours hearing the filmmakers I love, the actors I love, talking about their craft. What's the language they use to discuss how they do what they do? And then I literally wrote notes down. And the next time I watched a movie, I was like, I gave myself a homework assignment of like, use this grid to watch the movie. See this movie, this scene, the way that James Cameron, the way that Scorsese, the way that Samuel L. Jackson sees this film. Aaron Sorkin was one on screenwriting. How do they think about scenes? Now I'll watch it in light of that. And it challenges you to think differently. So many people, they watch it and they go, that movie was good. The action was good. The acting was bad. There's no perspective in that. There's no insight. You didn't offer anything that everyone else there didn't offer, in which case, why would someone choose to watch your reviews rather than the thousands out there? So have that perspective that you're kind of pulling into it. Another one I would say is every time I watch a movie, then I go to Wikipedia and I read the whole article, who's in it, and go through the whole backstory of what everything they've been. I go to IMDb, look at the trivia, and some of that stuff's wrong, some of Wikipedia's wrong, but just reading everything I can about the movie and the backstory to have a larger knowledge base than the average person that's watching one of my videos. So I'm studying, I guess, downstream from where they are, upstream from where they're at, so I can pour back into them with more knowledge than they have, to have more information, a better vocabulary, more knowledge to capture what they're feeling. Or even if they like viciously disagree with me, like, no, you're wrong, but I understand where you're coming from. Let's go to your thoughts on kind of growing in your ability to have that perspective, something unique to offer in your content.
I'm just a really good bullshitter. No, I always kind of take it from an emotional stance. Like I haven't done near the amount of homework, near the amount of research that Sean has, but I've always been really into storytelling. I've always been, at least in my mind, pretty good at articulating why a story moved me, where it did, why it didn't. And so when I turn on the camera, I tend to go from my emotions. You know, why did I love this action scene? Why did the last 30 minutes lose me? Why did I was brought to tears in this one scene? And I always find a way to kind of tap into what the filmmaker was trying to do or what the screenwriter was trying to do through that. So that's kind of more my approach. And then I always tie into, like, you know, nostalgia sometimes really is a big thing. And as far as just making a review, and essentially you're kind of making an argument. And in high school, junior high, one of the big things I always took with me, because I was always pretty good at essay writing, was teachers always tell you to write it or phrase it in a way as if it's factual. It is opinion, but you have to have that confidence that this is my experience and this is exactly why it is. And I just kind of carried that through into the way that I make my videos.
I'd say another one is watch lots of movies.
That too.
I mean, it seems really obvious, but the number of people that only watch Marvel movies and then they're like, hey, I want to start a channel reviewing movies. Well, have you seen this, and this? Like, well, I mean, I've seen Black Adam. I've seen Quantumania. I watched Shazam. Like, watch lots of movies. And you think the average person sees 10 new movies a year, 12 in the theater. They go maybe once a month, and they only go to the thing that they think they're going to like. They already filter through what they're going to watch. If you want to be a good critic, have a perspective, you need to have seen a lot of things to know what a bad movie looks like, or a bad movie that you enjoy. There's a ton of movies I can watch, like Bloodsport. I watch Bloodsport 10 times every year. I've seen it a zillion times. And so one of my friends heard that and he went, like, oh, I'm going to check out this movie Sean keeps raving about. Then he texts me. This movie has the worst writing and acting I've ever seen. Objectively speaking, he's not wrong, but he missed the point of the movie. And it's not for everybody, but I know, like, I can watch Bloodsport and go, yeah, this is ridiculous, but I know why I love it. But if you watch enough movies, you can decipher through all of those things and make useful recommendations to people. I would not have actually directly recommended Bloodsport to this guy, or I would have said, I mean, you're going to think it's terrible, but if you like watching a bunch of martial arts styles and Van Damme jump in the air, do the splits, and then like go, you'll love it. But I want to transition back over to you. One of the things you do is you do these incredible interviews and these amazing opportunities. So we got to the point you're writing, you're on Collider Movie Talk. But now, every week I look on the internet and you're interviewing another person that's literally the week that Chuck told me you're going to be on the same stage and panel, and then the next day you're interviewing Anna Kendrick, like my wife's favorite actress, and I'm like, hey, she's going to be on stage, and she's interviewing Anna Kendrick, and my wife's like, wait, I'm only 2 degrees separated from Anna Kendrick. Like, yeah, that's true. If you can, what's that kind of path? How do you get into kind of that world?
So when I first started working at Collider, I did a little bit of everything. I would interview, I would review, I would write up news, I would write up a lot of DVD press releases. Like, I literally did everything. I very, very quickly identified that I love the whole job. My favorite part of the job, though, was interviewing and talking to people and understanding why they made certain decisions, understanding how some like magical spectacle on screen was even possible and what it took. And I just made a choice to lean more and more heavily into that every step of the way. And early on, it's very structured when you get into that. You're presented a certain type of interview and you have a certain amount of time and a certain focus. And the more I did it, the more, even within the world of interviewing, I found specifically what I love doing. And some of you might know, like, my baby right now is my show Collider Ladies Night, and it's all about highlighting female forces in Hollywood who are changing the industry for the better. And it's kind of what we're doing here, actually, retracing their steps from their first dream to become an actor to the latest project that they're releasing, with a purpose of highlighting that every single path is different. Everyone has a different experience. Nothing is the right way. Nothing is the wrong way. Whatever works for you and feels right to you is the way to do it. But once I found something that, I don't know, felt so right and true to me, and I felt so satisfied by it, I just kept pushing to do more and more and more. And I still do review a lot of movies, but I would say at this point, my number one focus in my career is interviewing people. And it is just like the most satisfying feeling in the world, especially like doing something like the panels here at MegaCon, when you're sitting on stage with someone and you know that you're asking questions that an audience wants to hear the answer to, but also makes the person you're posing the question to feel proud of their work. That is the sweet spot. So being here the last couple of days, getting to do that was just like a purely joyful experience for me.
Let's pause right there. How do you write a good question? Because we've all seen the interviews that with the totally generic, what drew you to this role? And the ones that they answer 1,000 times. And we've seen the cringe ones where you ask the question, we're like, oh, please, why are you doing that? You're making my skin crawl by asking such an uncomfortable question. How do you write a great question?
So the first thing I'll say to that, because I just basically emphasized how I found my way to interviewing and found, my craft within that sphere. I always have to point out that every outlet is different. Every outlet is appealing to a different audience. And I have a feeling a lot of people here right now, you probably know the synopsis of a really popular new movie that's about to come out. Some of these outlets have audiences that are literally hearing about the movie for the very first time through their interviews. So whenever I'm like, I would never ask, tell me about your character, I do very much understand that there are people out there that need it in order to spark interest in seeing a movie. My personal style, and I guess one of my golden rules for myself, is that I never, ever ask a question that I don't genuinely want the answer to. Even when it comes to, and part of the job is you want to get that scoop. You want to get the information about an upcoming movie. if I can't find a respectful way to ask about that, and also to do it in a way that interests me and isn't just like surface level stuff I could read anywhere, I don't do it. That is always my guideline with these things.
Even something you said in there of thinking about the audience, like I look at some of those interviews and I go, why are you asking that question? Because I'm thinking about myself as a guy that does this for a living. Like even I can get detached from, right, they're not writing for me. I'm judging them based off me, not who they're asking a question for.
You bring up the Anna Kendrick one. You can watch that online. It's on the SAG-AFTRA Foundation YouTube channel. And the whole point of that particular conversation was that it was for their members. It's learning about her experience in a way that, you know, up and coming actors or maybe actors who just want another perspective can then apply to their own work. And I don't know, that's really exciting too. I love asking questions that play into this vibe, that play to an aspiring actor, you name it. But the point is you want to ask questions that feel true to yourself. Otherwise it's like reviews. People can sniff it out.
Yeah, so I've only done a couple of like celebrity director interviews because I'm in Austin. There's not a lot of opportunities. And the other problem was I interviewed Gabriel Luna for Terminator Dark Fate because he's from Austin. And I walked in and I went, thanks for interviewing me. That was my start to the first time I ever did the press junket thing. And he was gracious. He was great about the whole thing. And it was hilarious. And I love to make fun of myself, but legitimately I dropped the ball right out of the gate in my first one I did.
For what it's worth, I've done more interviews than I can count at this point. I'll guarantee you every single time I finish one, even if it goes well, I'll go home and I'll lose sleep over like the dumbest thing in the world. Like slipping in one extra or not phrasing a question properly. We're always our own worst critics. And I never realized that until I finally cut the thing together. And I'm like, you know what? That was pretty good. Why did I lose a whole night's sleep over it?
But it's human.
We're human. That I mean, no matter what end of the industry you're in, no matter what your dream is, that's always an important thing to remind yourself of.
So then over on our side of we're all these different places, start the YouTube channel, nobody knows who you are. What's kind of your thoughts on kind of building that community, connecting with people that builds that traction in that audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest things that have always tied us together is, you know, we kind of started around the same time. We found each other. There was, 4 or 5 other creators that started around the same time.
We found eeach other. When you phrase it that way, it sounds like a fairy tale.
It's the greatest romance movie ever starring Mel Gibson. So we had like, a group of 4 or 5 people that we regularly collaborated with, watched each other's videos, went into the comment section like the security team when trolls were there. And as we grew, certain people would fall off. They'd stop doing YouTube, or they would just kind of fall off the wagon there. And then we would meet other people. And I mean, John Flickinger, we've been watching him for how long? And we're sitting at a table with him all weekend. So community building has been a huge thing. Not only just, for me specifically within the horror YouTube space, so many other people that I've become really good friends with, that I push them, they push me, we learn from each other, but even just movie YouTubers in general. And even beyond all of that, like I don't watch a whole lot of YouTube as far as movie stuff when I go, and I watch on my own time. I watch a lot of cooking channels. I watch DIY stuff, and I learn from those guys and totally different sides of YouTube. So that's been one of our kind of secrets, is part of the secret sauce is community building, I would say.
And I felt like it's just been really making friends.
Yeah.
Like thinking about his networking. What can I get from this person? Just being friends with these people. Yeah. Like the guys we spent the weekend with, Austin Burke, John Flickinger, Cody, Chris Parker, 3C. We went to dinner every night. We hung out, talking in the rooms about movies and silly stories and stuff. And we're just friends. And those connections have benefits to building an audience over the internet, but just connecting with people, people can see the authenticity in a lot of that.
And they get excited when just a Instagram photo of like Sean and Cody met, and they're just like, I've been watching both of you. And it's, how many times do we hear the Avengers Assemble joke?
Right. This all weekend, these pictures we've been posting. Avengers Assemble, the YouTube Avengers are assembling. because they know there's like authentic friendships being formed there. And that's cool. That's cool when that happens. So did you guys have any final thoughts, final parting words of wisdom for people that want to get into this space?
Not really like a concluding set of parting words, but as you were explaining this, it popped into my mind. If you want to meet more people, get more experience, and understand the business better, I would highly recommend looking out for film festivals. And it doesn't have to be, the biggest of the big. It doesn't have to be Sundance, South by Southwest, or one of those. There are, just like conventions, there are film festivals everywhere, and the people who show up to those festivals are movie lovers to their core. And you also wind up doing one of the coolest things this business has. It's getting the opportunity to find hidden gems before anybody else does. So that is just a great place to learn, to network, and to meet more like-minded people.
Did I hear that you've seen Sisu?
I love Sisu. I saw Cease. It's from the director of Rare Exports, if anyone's ever seen that fantastic film. But I saw it at the Toronto International Film Festival. And if you like, bloody, gory action, that is a must watch.
This guy DM'd me on Instagram and he goes, have you heard of Sisu? It's like Finnish John Wick where he kills Nazis.
Good comp.
Sold. Most anticipated movie of all time. But to that point, I've only ever been to Fantastic Fest.
And that's the one I want to go to that I've never been to.
And it's cool because you're at one movie theater, and we watched Banshees of Inisherin get out of the movie to go to the bathroom. The director is standing in the stall next to us, and people sometimes don't have any shame. They're talking to him and like, "Hey man, great movie, buddy. Thanks." And it was like, but he's right there. And like Scott Derrickson's just kind of chilling, watch because he's connected with the VHS films.
Yeah,
and
we're waiting for a movie, and Sean's like, "Look behind you." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, Scott Derrickson."
Right. And they're just movie lovers. People aren't being weird, like anything like that. They're just movie lovers, and everyone there's a movie lover. You can connect with them. And like another movie YouTuber, Chris Stuckman, is currently in post-production on a movie, and his origin story of kind of getting that made was connections he made at Fantastic Fest. So like going to film festivals, meeting people, making connections, that's so powerful if you want traction in this area. Final closing parting thoughts for us.
If you love movies or whatever you want to go onto YouTube for, just figure out why you love them and start there. Put that out on your videos. Have that be kind of the guiding light as well as your personality. Everything else just comes with work and experience.
And I'll kind of tie it back to what we've said all along. Just start. If that means posting little reviews on the internet, just start. You need the at-bats. My movie reviews from the Jackie Chan fan webpage are still on the internet Wayback Machine. They're barely legible. They're barely even written in English. They're still out there. Just start. All of it takes time. Learn all along the way. Learn more about movies. Learn more about whatever production sites you want to go into it. And like if I was younger, I probably would have gone more down a path similar to what she did of learning some through formal education. A good friend of mine, Griffin Schiller of Film Speak, we started on kind of YouTube in the same window of time. And back 4 or 5 years back, he graduated from college and he called me up one day and we talked for like an hour or two, like, I'm thinking about just moving out to LA. And he was asking for advice. And I told him, like, if you can do that safely and responsibly, that's what I would do. Like, even if you do it and it goes wrong and it fails, what an incredible run you'll have. Interviewing people, meeting people, networking, going to premieres, just go for it, give it a try. And he emailed everyone that he knew out in LA to write for whoever he could. And he got some jobs and has had incredible opportunities out there. And now he's full-time writing video essays. That's awesome. And it's a totally different path from what we did. He has a background in communication and just went for it, moved out to LA and chased the dream, and it worked. So like us, we were married with kids, had a hobby that turned into a full-time career. You went down formal education, journalism, film, and doing incredible things. So just pick a path and go hard working at it. Dude, in the case of me, it took 20 years, but dreams do come true. Whatever you want to do, start making it happen. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and best of luck with all of your endeavors. No, thank you.
Thank you.
All these panelists are going to be doing meet and greets at their tables right over to the, what is this,